What's up, guys? Another Hunter x Hunter manga review. Don't worry, it will be coming to an end soon. Um, the last chapter is 340. I'm at 314 now, and it's been on hiatus for half a year, so who knows when that will end. Luckily, hiatus doesn't mean over, so I'm happy in a way. But at the same time, wow, what a chapter! I saw this coming. Again, first and final spoiler alert warning to all you guys who haven't watched the series. Uh, Feel free to stay if you don't mind it being spoiled. So, I'm simply going to talk about everything that has occurred since my last Hunter x Hunter video. So that's roughly the last 10 to 20 chapters up until chapter 314, which I just finished reading. And there's so many twists and turns with this, and I really think the author is very, very much a genius in a lot of ways for the paths that he has taken for a lot of this stuff. And I don't blame him. There's so many different options for events and people and lives and how they play out. And so, just like I would say almost 50 to 70 chapters ago, at that moment, probably at the moment of invasion, there was probably thousands of different routes which sort of branched out to maybe tens of thousands of different options for characters and plots and storyline that the author could have taken. And though at times I do think that the author could have taken some better routes, um, it was all very interesting. Like some things were just like it was like all of this was just it could have turned out to be a lot cooler or more epic. One of those things was obviously the Gon and Neferupatu fight. I believe that's the cat's name. It never really occurred. He pretty much just sat there waiting. Um, and at the same time, the whole story kind of revolved around that. Uh, Again, also the thing with Kato not being revived, I it could have been done better. Like the whole thing with Gon not really fighting Neferupatu, um, I'll let I'll let that slide for sure. I mean, it was kind of like a huge plot pivot point. Like you kind of needed that, but with Kato not like with the cat saying that Kato couldn't have been revived, I never trusted that because she said that after she got the call from, I believe his name's Wolfrin or whatever, who pretty much said that, who pretended that they had found Komunji, the chess playing girl, or not chess, the Gonji playing girl. And so I thought, like when I first read that, I thought maybe she's lying. Maybe she could have revived uh, this person, but she's just lying and saying she couldn't just to piss Gon off and kill him. And so I didn't like the whole thing where Gon pretty much just got so angry that he immediately killed this cat, and obviously the cat was going to kill him. But I just thought, I didn't like that, and maybe it was simply because I didn't want Kato to die, and that probably is just the case. But it could have definitely been avoided. I mean, I just personally think that. I mean, I'm still only at 314. Maybe Kato can be revived, and the cat was lying, and he does get revived in the future through some other means. But yeah, I don't know. It was definitely a plot twister, and that sort of fakery caused the cat to change his course of action. And another thing I didn't really understand was, like, remember the moment when the cat was pretty much begging them to give her time to heal Komunji, and with her promise, wasn't she didn't she offer that to give give them all four of her limbs, as well as let Gon kill her after she had revived Komunji. And I guess what happened was Gon was stupid and didn't go with that offering, and instead made the offering, okay, why don't you just heal Kato, and that's good enough. And so I don't know if so my thinking is because she's a cat and because of how devious she's been, she lied and said Kato could not have been revived, even though he could have. The other thing is maybe she, like the other ants, is in fact honorable and therefore did in fact speak the truth and honor her promise and realize that she couldn't revive Kato because his soul really was gone. Who knows? Maybe that's a lie. But in all honesty, it does make sense. Gon chose that sort of deal instead of like I would have thought a much more smarter deal was, let me kill you, and before I kill you, you have to heal Kato. And again, being a chimera ant, she probably would have broken that promise to survive. But still, I guess Gon is not the killing type. And so the whole thing with Gon exploding and busting out in a huge power level, I definitely don't think that he would have been able to do that had he not been told that news. Had he just straight up fought whatever her name is, Nefera Patu, or whatever the cat's name is, had he simply fought the cat as soon as they invaded the palace, instead of this strange thing where she has to heal Komunji, it would have played out a lot differently, for sure, and he would have never gotten this state. Now, I haven't seen him since he passed out from that state, but essentially, you know what happened. He morphed into an adult and then got super long hair, which shot straight up for like 50 feet. And I thought, at first I was like, this is kind of weird. It's kind of a weird state. And then I'm like, I guess it's because they didn't want to copy Dragon Ball Z outright. But it's definitely hard to not copy, so he tried to do this different hairstyle thing. That may or may not be true, but another thing to note is that Killua's hairstyle when he's in his electrified state is ridiculously like Dragon Ball Z. I don't know. So very, very strange stuff. I thought it was really, really cool, but again, these things come with costs. And this, I'm going to do a little bit of a One Piece spoiler. So spoiler alert for One Piece. This likens to Luffy. Remember that moment when he gets, I think he gets poisoned by the guy named, I believe his name's Magellan, the poison guard from the warden from the jail, impaled down. And then he chooses to go through this healing process that had like a 20% or 10% success rate, but by just going through that process, it had 100% certainty of dramatically shortening his lifespan if he were to survive. And so that was like hundreds of chapters ago in One Piece, and since then we haven't seen any effects of that, but like it's implied that he will die a lot sooner due to old age if he lives that long. So I don't know, I think that's really sad, and these main characters, they don't seem to care or notice. Gon, same thing. It was confirmed multiple times that this sort of technique, by him forcing it, it caused a lot of stress and stuff, and pretty much, yeah, he cut down his lifespan tremendously. And on top of that, it's not like he learned a new technique and stuff, or he gained tremendous power. It was a temporary power boost. It was temporary. So, completely temporary, completely useless. I mean, sure, he pretty much beat Neferupatu, or whatever the cat's name is, ridiculously quickly. Like, the cat tried attacking like once, I believe, and then he just got owned. Apparently the cat's a he. And I'm just like, here's the thing. Gon loses an arm, okay? He loses an arm from this. And so that raises a lot of questions. I haven't seen Gone since, but that raises a lot of questions. Will he, as the main character, obviously, be in a permanent adult state from now on, yet act like a kid? Most likely not. He will have morphed back to his normal child form. But will from here on out, will he be the main character without an arm? And this reminds me of Yu Yu Hakusho. Again, spoiler alert. But in Yu Yu Hakusho, basically, I remember this one moment, and again, this just embarrassingly reminds me of how big a nerd I am. About 5 to 10 years ago, when I was in like middle school, I went to this Yu-Gi-Oh tournament at a bookstore, and I was playing this guy for fun, and he pretty much said that he watched Yu Yu Hakusho until the end, and he told me that in the manga or anime or whatever, the guy the Yusuke, he ends up losing his arm, and I was like, go ahead, spoil it for me. And he did, and I was like, what the heck, seriously? So he's a main character without an arm now, really? And he just goes on for like how many chapters without an arm until the series ends? That's just not right. And that's just how I feel with main characters, like losing arms. You're not looked at as the same guy, even in real life. Someone loses an arm, you don't look at them in the same way anymore. And then I read the series, and he didn't lose an arm. At least I don't believe he does. And then I was like, was I trolled? But I don't know, it's been so long since I read the series. I can't remember. I don't think he has. I don't think he lost an arm. But still, it raises a lot of questions. And again, I'm going to reference another series, Toriko. Toriko spoiler alerts coming at you. Click away if you don't want to hear them. This happens in Toriko, and the first time it happened in Toriko, I was shocked out of my mind. Same sort of reaction. Is he now a main character without an arm? Because Toriko was in the same sort of sense. Like, this stuff didn't happen all the time. And that was like 200, 300 chapters in when it happened. Same sort of time frame. And then what happened with him, with Toriko, was he regrew his arm with like the food in the universe. And so it's like, oh, right, it's Toriko. They have that kind of stuff. And so I was like, I wasn't expecting much. And then when it happened again, spoiler alert, when it happened again and he lost his arm again, I was like, whatever, he's probably going to regrow it. And that time he even lost the leg too, and I was like, whatever. But still, as far as, I mean, even then, in Toriko, it took him like a long, like many months to regrow just an arm. But it can be done. So the thing with Hunter x Hunter is it's not as simple a manga. It's not like they don't have all this mystical stuff where you can just regrow arms and stuff like in the Toriko universe. So I'm kind of scared here. And it seems like he left his arm in the cat and then just left the scene. So there's no, I don't think he's going to sew it back. And if he does, I mean, the arm's in adult form. So if he's regressed to a child. Anyhow, the most important thing I want to say from the beginning, which I haven't said yet, and I have to say before I forget, is, again, the whole touching thing with the Chimera Ant King, Miriam is his name, I believe, and the child, the Gonji player. And I predicted this from a very early on age, from like the first time when she walked in all confident, all blind, and treated this king like an equal. From that moment, I knew something special was happening, and I was just amazed and surprised at how much of an effect she's had. However, I never really thought it was that big of an effect. I mean, there were constant moments where like half the chapter was foreshadowing the king to suddenly change his whole mentality and sort of switch ways and say he renounces any sort of killing and will never kill again. And there was like multiple moments throughout the arc where there's foreshadowing towards this, but at the very end you see a complete switch, and rather than the expected mentality shift, he switches to a more vicious one. Oh, right. So violence is the key, and he does this sort of stuff. So I don't know. I wasn't really expecting that much, um, and I guess that's still the case. The king, I believe, he still, at the end of the day, he still wanted to be the ruler. He still wanted to be the king. He still wanted to continue with his human massacre selection process, and again, he made a lot of sort of promises. Like he made Netero, rest in peace. He made Netero a promise that he said, "When I become king, I will let humans live in ghettos, and I will just choose the highest quality humans and make sure I prevent their numbers from growing too much." And he did this a couple times to many people, which I guess he was swayed definitely by how Komonji was as a person to him. And there's even this one, like, you saw like changes throughout his character, but at the end of the day, through regardless, he still wanted to be king and sort of control and kill humans, regardless of all this. So at the end, at the final chapter I just read, 314, it still feels like he's doing this, but at the same time, he's definitely grown tremendously. I mean, the biggest example was with Wolfrin. I believe that's his name, the wolf chimera ant. Um, he pretty much, like, when the king was walking away from him, Wolfrin couldn't contain it, and he was like, "You will never be a king. The only king is Gyro. You are nothing but, no one's a king like Gyro." And then he just shouts this at the king. And moments before, he was scared to death for his life, barely able to muster one word. And he shouts this out at this chimera ant king. And he's fully expecting to get killed because that's the king's expected behavior typically. And rather than getting killed, the king has had a change in behavior, possibly due to Komonji. Again, and rather than killing him like he usually does, he says something like, "That's very interesting. I wish I could meet this guy and talk to him." And then he says something very key, which was, "I wish I could be human myself," or something along those lines. And it's just like, wow, he's definitely changed. But at the same time, he still wants to rule humans and kill them all. And so it's a very subtle change. And then finally, the most touching part at the end, before I get to that, the most touching part, this is a huge WTF moment for me. I was very confused about this. In fact, I wanted to do a whole video on this, but I didn't. The moment when Wolfrin was caught by the Chimera Ant King, along with the butterfly guy, Sufu or whatever his name is, when he got caught, and then the Chimera Ant King could sort of like sense his emotions and stuff. And remember that moment when he was pretty much shocked. He was so freaking scared to death that the king would just kill him there, because the king had already sensed his hatred towards the king. That he, at least in the manga, it said he aged 100 years. Whether he actually aged 100 years or he didn't, I mean, it seemed like he aged like 20 or 30 years, not 100. But it definitely looked like he got a lot more old just from all the stress. And then he was just like, there was just sweat pouring down his face, and he was envisioning the king like biting his head off, and he was just scared to death. At that moment, when he finally said, "What can I do? What can I do to save myself?" And then there's all these panels, which, by the way, was very awesome. There's all these panels of like the universe and the galaxies, and him just like inside his mind, all these thoughts trying to figure out the one word to say that could possibly prevent his death. And then like, I guess the galaxies and stuff were some way of showing how incredible and amazing and divine, you could say, the word he came up with, which was Komonji ... question mark. And I was like, how on earth did you figure that out? Because I don't think Komonji has ever set eyes or met or talked to anyone other than the 3 royal guards and the king himself. So Wolfrin, or whatever the wolf chimera ant's name is, How did he know Komonji's name or who Komonji was? And if in fact it was just some sort of divine sort of lucky muttering of the word, which I don't think it was, because he had a sense, he definitely had a sense based on his behavior and dialogue after saying that he knew who Komonji was. How does that make sense? I don't think in the entire manga it was revealed that anyone else saw Komonji other than three guards. So maybe I'm guessing because he was trying to become Shadow King, maybe he found some information, or he was connected with information in the castle, or maybe he did meet Komonji at one point. I'm not really sure, but that was that very much surprised me. I thought that was a little bit of a disconnect. And so the most touching part of the story, which I really want to get into, is the Chimera Ant King and Komonji. Basically, he pretty much finds out and quickly accepts the fact that he's going to die from the rose poison. And so he pretty much says, I just want to spend these last hours with Komonji. And it's very touching, very humanistic, and very, very heartwarming. And so props to him, very awesome. And I was very touched by that. But at the same time, I still feel like throughout this, he still wanted to rule the world. And people might think, oh, he was different to humans. He didn't want to kill humans anymore. After he lost his memories, the king was different. And I would have to disagree. Why? Because after he lost his memories, he came back to his palace, saw the millions of humans lined up, and he was talking about how he still wanted to go through with this. So, and I mean, it was evident throughout the dialogue when he was traveling back to the palace, and the dialogue when he finally got to the palace too. So I don't think he's that you know, it's not that big a change. But I still applaud him, respect him. At the very least, he seems like he's sort of accepted death, and at the same time, it's very heartwarming what he's doing, a very human thing. He wants to spend his last moments with another human. Very heartwarming. And it's quite a shame, really. It's very quite a shame that we never really see him use his new power level, because he was so powerful before his fight with Netero, and then afterwards he got almost two of the royal guards auras. So apparently his power level was on possibly the highest level in the entire Hunter x Hunter world, but we never get to see that because of a simple poison that killed him, which was kind of sad, but at the same time it's for the better of humanity. Which leads me to my final thing. If you read the manga series, there was this one whole, I would say 10 pages of a chapter, and it started off with pretty much the octopus ant escaping, and he made one remark, and it was that we are worse than ants, or something like that. It was like we humans are just as bad as ants. No, we are worse. And that was a statement. And then it pans out, and you see about 5 to 10 pages of scenery, probably like 5 pages or 4 pages of scenery of just the atrocities of humans. And you see all these different scenes, like homelessness, a tribe that's almost starved to death, a gang beating up people, a street with like a street where there's a girl surrounded by paparazzi and an expensive car, and yet on that same street there are a bunch of bums who are drinking alcohol in the alley. And a lot of other things, like you see like a fashion runway with models, and then you see like a huge dark night sky with like it was very hard to see what it was, but it seemed like there was like 50 sort of planes dropping like hundreds of bombs down, and so forth and so forth. And it was just like showing how bad humanity was, and it was very touching in a different way, showing how we are not that different. We can technically be just as cool, if not more cool, than these chimera ants, and yet we actually exist in the real world, while chimera ants are just a fictional thing. And it's just showing how like we are just as cool, if not more cool, and we are simply doing it because we're on the top of the food chain and exploiting things and being very, very cool. And I guess another I wouldn't say the biggest panel that bugged me. I mean, a lot of panels bugged me, but the biggest one was probably like the poverty one and the paparazzi one, and also like the food ones. There was a few where it was like it was just showing like other animals killed, massacred by humans. There was like a huge like line of like beef carcasses, cow carcasses hanging like along a line, and then there was a panel where it was just like all these fish which seemed to be floating to the surface because of toxic waste and so forth. So very touching stuff. And finally Komonji and the whole thing, and again a lot of heartstrings pulled. I never saw this when reading the entire Yu Yu Hakusho. I mean, I saw stuff like this, but it was never as heart touching. So maybe he's gotten better at this, or maybe I believe the author has just connected on a very deep level with this, the whole series, the characters, storyline, and he really wants to draw out some points. And I guess he's gotten the snowball of a story going so much that it's rolling by itself now. And like once, I think that's how it is for most artists or authors. Once you have a story going and it's good, and you have the general mainframe, the plot, the universe, the characters, it kind of just rolls by itself. Like you kind of almost expect or know what's going to happen. So rather than telling a story or inventing a story, you're simply just letting the story write itself in a way. I mean, like let's say you got to halfway through the Chimera Ant and you were the creator of the story. It's kind of like obvious where things will go from there, and you just simply let the story tell itself, which is a very magical thing. And I don't know. One thing, again, I don't want to hang on too much on this, but we live in a universe with possibly millions of planets due to the hundreds of thousands of galaxies with solar systems in it. So because of all this greatness in the galaxy, I mean there has to be, just due to probability, a good chance that there's other habitable life out there. And because of that, I mean, maybe there's a universe or world out there where Hunter x Hunter actually exists. And that's a very scary and at the same time very heartbreaking thing, because of how warm some of these, or how touching some of these stories are. But, you know, I would never want to be in that world. I mean, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of tragedy. Kato dying, great big tragedy. A lot of tragedy. I mean, and it seems like for the main part, which isn't a tragedy, again, I have a hard time pronouncing that word. What isn't a tragedy is the goofballs that are the main mass of humans out there. Like when you see them in these panels, they all look retardedly stupid and slow and sluggish and weak. But anyhow, finally, the most heartwarming scene or panel was the one where Miriam, he opens the coffin that's hiding Komonji, the chess player. I don't know if that's the actual name, but it was very heart touching because so far in the manga, most of the characters, I would say 99% of them, and pretty much all the characters have been drawn in sort of like a manga cartoonish simple way, save for maybe Palm when in a few panels Palm was drawn like a normal realistic girl in a few panels, and that was usually when there was like a close-up, like when Palm showed up for the date with Gon. And in this panel, we see Komonji, which for the last 100 chapters has been depicted in this sort of cartoonish way from afar. You know, typical girl, messy hair, blind, acting like a girl, acting like this cartoonish, you know, naive girl. And in this panel, we see after the coffin being opened, the most realistic picture of a girl you could ever see. And it was just so heart touching because it was just a little girl and she had snot through her nose and a snot bubble in her other nose, and just it was all just dripping down, and you could just it was just the most realistic thing, and you could tell he drew it realistically on purpose, and it definitely evoked a huge sort of heartwarming emotion, and I have to applaud him on that. And so from there, I don't know what happens. The chapter ended with him saying, with again, this very heart touching, Miriam pretty much smiling and saying, "Wake up, you want to play a game." And before that, you see a dialogue box, and just like the night sky, and then pretty much it's Komonji, if I'm saying her name right, the Gonji player, her talking in her sleep and making chess moves. It's not even chess, it's Gonji moves. And so I thought that was very heart touching. It was like she was like snort 375 rook, snort, continue. And so great plot, very sad, and the most saddest part was just the king in general. I mean, he was very cool, but at the same time very heart touching for him to just sort of realize his incoming doom and just not display humanistic emotion and cry or whine or complain about it or be sad, but just, you know, meet this girl and play chess, and just go up to her, wake her up and say, "Hey, let's play." And he displayed in this last panel just a happy face, and it was just the embodiment of the whole chapter, which was what he said multiple times throughout the chapter to Palm, which was, "These are my last hours. I realized at the moment I sensed your feelings. All I want to do is play with this girl and see this girl one last time, and that will make me happy." And he showed that by just with that smile when he saw the girl. And it's just crazy how this king was affected so much by this girl. And quite honestly, on both sides, humans and chimera ants, they made a lot of mistakes that could have won them the entire struggle from a very earlier standpoint. One example from human side is Knuckle. Had he not cancelled his ability, he would have killed that royal guard, which would have probably made it a lot harder to revive the king. And from the Chimera Ant King side, I guess just maybe had they killed off this girl earlier, or not let them meet, or just a lot of other things to guard the king better, or do some other stuff. I mean, like, there's that one moment when one of the royal guards chose not to kill the people who was attacking, because he thought they were trash anyways, and that cost him. And so thanks for watching all 35 minutes of this. If you did, shows a lot of respect for this, and it's great stuff. As always, like, favorite, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.